Glory to God, and good morning. All right, it's been almost 2 weeks now since I posted, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's embarrassingly simple, and it's also the whole lesson today. I got Giardia. Out mining, out in the dirt, doing what men do, thinking, hey, I'm being careful, thinking that I'm smart, thinking I'm tough. And then I just get laid out by something that you can't even see. And that's the first lesson today. The stuff that takes you out, it isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's microscopic. Sometimes it's the little mistake, right? The hand that wasn't as clean as you thought, the splash in the face you didn't notice, the snack that you ate with hands that had touched the wrong thing, or the water that you trusted because, hey, it looked clean. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because it ties perfectly into what a lot of people are feeling right now. Okay, we're living in a time where the big headlines are real loud, you guys. The war talk, retaliation talk, the domestic terrorism talk, people being on edge, people wondering if the chaos overseas is going to reach us here. And I'm not here to hype fear, okay? I'm here to build men who stay stable when the world is unstable. Because the same principle that got me sick out in that creek, well, it's the same principle that gets communities hurt during unrest. Complacency, assumptions, overconfidence, and, well, I hate saying it, but being unprepared for the invisible stuff. So here's today's hard road hour topic, okay? It's basically just how to stay stable for your family and your community in a time of war, threats, and instability, okay? Not through paranoia, no, through preparation and discipline and brotherhood. Now, I want to say something here, okay? I'm going to bring this out before I say anything else, okay? Because if you're the kind of person who wants to turn war into an excuse to hate strangers, okay, you're not prepared. You're weak. Hate makes you sloppy, okay? Hate makes you blind. It can make you jumpy. And we all know that, well, jumpy men, they make mistakes. The hard road, we don't do witch hunts, okay? What we do is we do awareness. We watch behavior, we watch situations, we watch patterns. We don't label whole groups of people as threats unless they believe in ideology that's a threat. Because the truth is, danger, it doesn't come with a uniform, right? Okay. So let's start with the mining story, because it's the simplest way to talk about real life right now. You guys, Giardia humbled me, okay? It's been years since I had it my first time. This is time 2. But it reminded me that being an outdoorsman, it doesn't make you immune, right? It reminded me that, I've done this 1,000 times, can still get you burned. It reminded me that you could be a strong man and still get taken out if you don't respect the basics. And that's what I want you to understand about domestic stability. The basics, they're not optional, okay? It's not prepper. It's not politics. It's not panic. Guys, it's adult responsibility. Because if things go sideways, and they will, you don't get to rewind time and then stock up for that. If the power goes out, and it stays out, okay, you're stuck with what you have right then. If fuel gets scarce, okay, you're stuck with where you are. If the communication systems get jammed, right, you're stuck with a plan that you already built before it happened. That is it. So what does a stable man do? What does he do, right? Well, he inventories his reality without spiraling, okay? He doesn't do it like a scared person. He does it like a leader, okay? He goes and he asks himself, and calmly, okay, what breaks first around me? If the power went out tonight, what becomes a problem first? Okay, is it heat? Is it the water? Is it food storage? Is it medicine? Is it just the mental stress of everyone being stuck together with no distractions? That's a real thing. If gas got tight for a week, okay, what's going to stop? If the internet got weird for a few days, how does my household coordinate? Where do we meet? What's our check-in plan? What do we do if we can't reach each other? And I want you to notice something here, okay? None of those things I just mentioned are fear, okay? No, they're all structure, okay? Structure creates calm. Chaos creates panic. All right. So now I'm going to try to give you the hard road version of preparedness, okay? I'm not going to give you some shopping list. I want to give you a mindset, okay? Because guys, preparedness is margin, okay? Margin is what keeps you from doing dumb things under pressure, okay? So when you live right on the edge, okay, you're one event away from desperation. And you guys, desperation is when people make choices that ruin their lives or the lives of others. So what does margin look like, right? Well, it looks like, one, having enough water and food that you don't have to join the mob down at the store, okay? It looks like having light that works without the power grid, right? It looks like having enough cash on hand to function if the electronic systems are being glitchy. It looks like, having a stockpile of your prescriptions handled and a basic medical baseline, okay? It looks like not letting your vehicle live on E, okay? It looks like your home being a place of order, not a place of clutter and confusion. And what the biggest margin of all, it's this. It's fitness and self-control. Because you guys, if you're out of shape, if you're stressed and undisciplined, okay, man, you're a liability. Immediately, you're a liability. Think about that right now. You get tired faster. You're going to get emotional faster. You get angry faster. You make really bad decisions faster. And in a high-stress environment, okay, it's never the weak man who thinks he's weak that scares me, okay? No, it's the highly unstable man who thinks he's strong. The loud guy who can't control himself, right? The guy who panics, but that panic shows up as aggression and then lashing out. The guy who thinks that adrenaline is leadership. Bro, it isn't, okay? A stable man is calm. A stable man is alert. A stable man is decisive without being reckless. And you guys, there's some threats on our soil right now that could be committed by radical, believers of Islam ideology. We got to watch out for them, okay? Not the people, but the ideology. And I want to address this in a disciplined way because, you guys, radical ideology exists. And, it's used to justify evil by these people in the name of their version of God and their politics and their cause. And you guys, that can inspire lone actors and copycats and opportunists. But the worst response is to turn into a paranoid animal that just sees enemies everywhere, okay? So here's how a stable man thinks about risk when he's out in public spaces, okay? You're not trying to identify types of people, okay? No, it's deeper than that. you have to watch behavior, and you have to watch the environment. You have to ask yourself, what is normal right here where I'm at? What is the natural flow? What is the baseline? Okay? And then you watch for the break in the pattern. Okay? Things that should raise your alertness are not somebody's skin color, okay, or their clothing, but their ideology. Look for that. It's also behavior that looks like pre-incident instability or intent. Okay, and what I mean by that is like someone who is unusually fixated on entrances, exits, choke points, security routines, right? Someone who is loitering with no purpose or just pacing, repositioning themselves over and over, scanning in a way that looks like they're searching, right, rather than just observing. Someone who looks, intensely agitated, right? Sweating heavily without a reason, breathing hard, muttering to themselves, clenching fists, and, not engaging with the environment around them like a normal person would usually. They're breaking the baseline. Someone who tries to get into restricted areas or keeps testing boundaries or keeps probing. You guys, abandoned bags, right? People leaving items and then, walking away quickly. Just a sudden shift in the room where, the energy changes because, someone is behaving more like a storm front entering the space. So I want you to hear me here, okay, and carefully. This doesn't mean that we confront that person. Not all of us should do that. That doesn't mean you go and you play hero, okay? Hard road hour, this is not cosplay, okay? Hard road hour, it's competence, okay? If something feels off, you move, right? You create distance. Get your people out. Leave early, okay? You don't stand there and debate it for 10 minutes because, you're worried about, looking weird. A stable man will accept the social awkwardness to reduce the risk to himself and his people because the goal is not to win, all right? The goal is not to win. No, the goal is for everybody to go home. So now let's bring it back to my Giardia story again because I want this lesson to stick. And you guys, I'm still sick right now. Giardia didn't get me because I was stupid, okay? No, it got me because I got casual. And, that's what happens to communities too. People, they get casual about the basics. And they begin to outsource their stability to the system, right? They assume that the lights will always be on. They assume that they can always just go buy what they need. People assume that help is going to arrive quickly, and then when the stress hits, they're shocked. Hard road men don't get shocked. No, we were already ready. Now here's the part. Here, let's try this, okay? Let's see if this can hit right here, okay? Men, we need brotherhood, not some chat room, okay? Not a bunch of guys swapping memes about societal collapse. I'm talking real brotherhood, because isolation is a weakness, even if you're tough. A lone man can be strong, okay? But a lone man is still one injury, one illness, one bad week away from becoming overwhelmed. A small circle of disciplined men, that becomes redundancy, right? It becomes capacity. It becomes stability. So what does that look like without turning into some weird fantasy club, right? Well, it looks like 2 or 3 men that you trust. You check in weekly, you guys, okay? You share skills with each other. You cover each other's blind spots. And you do quiet preparation without panicking. And then you also have to talk through all the basic plans. You have to hold each other, accountable to being calm and sober-minded and disciplined. And the byproduct of that type of brotherhood, well, it becomes safety. Because when a community has a core of men, right, who are calm and capable, well, the community doesn't collapse into hysteria as fast, okay? And yes, right, it makes men more dangerous in the right ways. Not reckless, okay? Capable. A capable man is extremely dangerous to chaos. A capable man is dangerous to panic. A capable man is dangerous to disorder because he doesn't feed it, right? No, he takes it and he contains it, right? He stabilizes, he leads. Now, let me throw some tough love at us, okay? You and me, right? Because I don't get to preach discipline while I'm sloppy, okay? And you don't get to talk big while you live on the edge. If you can't handle a 2-day power outage, okay, without just spiraling, you're not free, okay? You're dependent. And if you can't go a week without comfort and still stay calm, you're not strong. No, you're just entertained. If you can't take responsibility for the basics, you're not too busy, okay? You're just avoiding adulthood. And if you're going to be a man who leads, right, you don't wait for fear to force you into some discipline, okay? You choose hard by choice. Train your body. Train your mind, okay? You build that margin. You build and hold on to brotherhood. You stay stable. So let me end this on a high note here, because this is not doom and gloom, you guys. This is literally a call to strength. Most men have never been invited, right, into responsibility in a way that makes them feel alive. This right here, this is that invitation, brother. You don't have to be scared to be prepared, okay? You don't have to be hateful to be alert, right? You don't have to be paranoid to be wise. You just have to be disciplined, okay? So here's an action step for you today, okay? I want you to pick one weak link in your life and handle it this week. Not next month, this week, okay? Power, water, food, fuel, fitness, okay? Or community, right? Pick one. And then in the comments, I want you to write 2 things, okay? First, what weak link that you're going to be fixing, okay? And second, well, what you're going to do about it in 1 sentence. And if you want more Hard Road Hour episodes like this, right, hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications, man, because I'm not building a channel for spectators here, okay? I'm building a channel for men who actually move, okay? Walk the hard road. I'll see you later.